everybody. Nikki Burnett here. Today's Taste Life Nutrition Radio and podcast streaming live on KUHSdenver.com, where today we're going to talk a little bit about longevity. And I forgot to start some of my videos. All right, there we go. We're going to have some fun talking genetics. Sort of my favorite thing to talk about. But how do they relate to you? How do they relate to us in our everyday life? And what can we do to optimize our health through understanding our genetics and the things in our epigenome and all the things that impact our DNA, and how can we protect our DNA, because they are always in repair, but we need to make sure that we are protecting our DNA to a degree that there is more protection than there is damage, right? Because there's always going to be damage. Excuse me. As always, we start the show with gratitude, because gratitude can change the world. So today, I'm grateful for, I might have said this last week, but we're getting closer, so I'm super excited about it. But we're going to Mexico. So we're going to Mexico on the 1st, and we're going through the 11th, I think. So it'll be a nice, good, long trip. So by the time I get back here, on that following Thursday, I will be super tan and super rested, and probably not quite ready to be back, but I will be. Anyway, but I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for an amazing husband who, loves to travel as much as I do, and we just get to go and have as much fun as our pocketbooks will allow us to have. So appreciate that so much. So let's do this. We're going to jump into basically what we can do, the things that we can do to prevent excessive damage, really, because there's going to be damage. There's going to be oxidative stress. There's going to be things that break down our tissues, our DNA, our cells, but our body is so beautifully created that it has mechanisms to allow it to repair. But we've got to be on board with that, right? We talk about this a lot. We talk about partnering with our bodies, because our body's ultimate goal is to keep us alive. That's kind of it. And so if we're not in alignment with that goal, then there's going to be a problem. And so when we talk about alignment with our body and partnering with our body, it really is giving it what it needs in order to do its job, which is to keep us alive. And it's got all of these processes and redundancies that makes it work. And it's so amazingly and beautifully created, but we've got to be a part of that. And so, it's everything that we do in life, right? You hear me talk about epigenetics all the time. In case you're new, and you don't know that term, epigenetics are locations on top of our genes that control gene expression. And so that gene expression, or the epigenome, is controlled then by the choices that we make, which is awesome. This is God's gift of free will, right? So it's my choice what I decide I want to do. It's my choice what I eat. It's my choice what I put on my skin or in my body. It's my choice how much sleep I get. It's my choice how I talk to myself. It's my choice how I manage stress, right? There are some things that aren't our choices, right? We can't usually control the amount of trauma that we experience, right? And so trauma can manifest, or often, if not always, manifest physically, but it can manifest physically, mentally, emotionally. And so we also can't really control, unfortunately, the toxins that are in our outside environment, but we can control the toxins that are in our inside environment, in our homes. So think about the things that we use in our homes. Are they good, clean, healthy cleaning products, dish products, clothes cleaning products, hair and body care, or are we doing things like the smelly plug-ins that are crazy toxic, right? Are we using your typical everyday, mainstream kind of, body care products, hair care products, cleaning products, all of those things that are super toxic. If they're super smelly, they're usually super toxic. If the smell goes away pretty quickly, then that's probably a good thing because it's more likely a more natural product, an essential oil, something like that. But we want to have an awareness of all of those things. And so when we look at cellular damage and DNA damage, what we need to keep in mind is that this stuff doesn't happen overnight, right? It all begins with just a single cell. And so that single cell over time can create a whole lot of problems. So you think about cancer. Cancer starts with a single cell. We're told that everybody has cancer. I don't remember if it's like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times throughout their lives, right? It's part of DNA damage, right? It's a part of cellular dysfunction. But the goal is to have a robust immune system, a robust microbiome, in order to manage those nasty cells that find their way and start to proliferate. And so when we have a good, healthy, robust immune system, then our immune system finds it, snags it, tags it, kills it, and it's on its way out. So that's ideally what we want to happen, right? That's the goal. And so what can happen oftentimes if we don't have this robust immune system is the cells, think of it as a cancer cell, because cancer cells are super tricky, right? There are often times where they are essentially masked and the body doesn't recognize them. And so they can escape repair, they can avoid immune detection, right? So they bypass what's called apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. So this is a natural part of the body, is this apoptosis. But if it doesn't naturally die the way that it's supposed to, then it sits around, and you can call them, cancer cells, but you've got your zombie cells, which are these senescent cells that stick around as well. And so then they can continue to replicate, especially the cancer cells. They continue to replicate and just create more and more problems. And so they're replicating as a non-functioning or a dysfunctional cell, creating problems for us. And so we have billions and billions and billions of these repair processes, right, that go on all the time, that are there to, they're redundant, they're there to keep us safe, they're there to squash these zombie cells or these cancer cells and disease and tag it so the body recognizes it. And so the damage is always being corrected. But we want to make sure that we're giving the body what it needs in order that it has the ability to do the correcting. So if we're missing micronutrients, if we're missing protein, if we're missing these antioxidants and phytonutrients and all these things that our body needs and uses in order to function properly, then it's going to be dysfunctional in eliminating these damaged cells, right? So, we talk a lot about longevity, and I've got longevity in the title of the show. And this is true because obviously longevity is an important thing, right? We want to be around as long as we can be around. In my mind, it's more about the quality than it is the quantity, because I could have a truck take me out tomorrow, right? But as long as I'm here, I want to live as well as I possibly can, and I don't want to be laid up in a bed or on a walker or unable to think or function properly without help. I want to be able to do all of these things on my own until the day I'm no longer here, until that moment I'm no longer in this place. And so I think that that's the most important part of this. But if we are allowing the body to utilize its cleanup systems properly the way that it's supposed to, then that is going to create increased longevity, and it's going to increase quality, right? So if we are disease-free for the entirety of our working life, obviously we're all going to have an end. It's going to happen. That's part of life, is dying, right? But we can increase how well we live as well as how long we live, given there's not some accident, right? So it is super, they both are very important. And so we want to make sure that we're strengthening our repair systems. Okay, so we talk about DNA damage. There are a lot of things that cause damage. So it can cause damage to the DNA strand itself. So it can do things like the oxidative. There can be oxidative damage, right? So we have free radicals. So there can be toxins in the environment that create free radicals. We can have natural processes of the cells of the mitochondria that create an oxidative, that creates free radicals. And so it's also a natural process, but we still have to have that cleanup system, right? So we want to have more antioxidants to help clean up than we have free radicals, right? So we need to have the cleanup there, but there is a balance. Mitochondria produce oxidative stress. It's part of it. It's the way that it goes, right? We have these processes that happen all over the body, but if we're taking in the phytonutrients and the fruits and the vegetables and these things that are high in antioxidants, then we have the ability to manage the oxidative stress that we're under. Right, so we can also have then, if we're looking at DNA specifically, we can have these single strand breaks, we can have double strand breaks, which are certainly more serious. We can have telomere shortening. So telomeres are kind of cool. If you haven't heard of telomeres, they're these little hairs that are on the ends of DNA strands. So what happens, and this is my understanding, but we are programmed essentially to live 120 years. And so those telomeres are the length of, however that works, right, of 120 years. And so over time, and as we age, and as we have more damage and oxidative stress, and all of these things happen to us, the telomeres shorten. So they can shorten at a normal time frame, right? Or there can be excessive shortening. And so excessive shortening essentially means you are older than what you actually are. So we can look at our chronological age, and we can look at our true age. And so those telomeres, we can test them too. I've not done this yet, and I want to do it. It's a little unnerving, but as much work as I do to keep myself in a good spot, it's a good thing to know. So if my telomeres are shorter than they should be, what then do I need to start doing to increase my telomere length, which we can do, right? So you can, in a sense, age backwards if your telomeres are shorter than they should be. So cool stuff, right? We have the ability to mitigate so much damage and the aging process to a degree. It's really fun. And so there is, as I had just said, so there's damage that happens daily from our typical normal metabolism, right? That's what I was talking about. So our mitochondria, well, that's part of the cellular process, part of the mitochondrial process, and producing energy, producing ATP. It produces oxidative stress or free radicals. So breathing, same thing, can produce some free radicals as part of it. Blood sugar fluctuations. Now we're gonna have blood sugar fluctuations as we eat, and as we take in different types of nutrients, right? Different nutrients, macronutrients are going to push or not push blood sugar fluctuations. And so normally we have a normal range of blood sugar fluctuation as we eat. What can be a problem is if the blood sugar is excessive, right? You have a crazy spike. I talked about this a while back where I have been working on understanding my own genetic makeup and building out my food and my lifestyle based on that, which of course is what I do with the Precision Blueprint as well, right? I do this for anyone who wants to do something like this, but we can take the information and put it all together so we understand what we need to do in order to fully optimize. Now, one of the things that I noticed when I was kind of going through this process of learning more about me and digging deeper into me was when I was wearing the continuous glucose monitor. And I ate on an empty stomach, I ate a grapefruit. Most of the time you think I'm going to have a healthy snack, I'm going to eat a grapefruit. And also grapefruits are there, often they are weight loss. We talk about them and managing, weight loss and weight control and that kind of thing. What happened though when I ate this grapefruit on an empty stomach is it spiked my blood glucose levels to almost 200. That's insane. It's so high. And so it was a huge learning experience for me, in that that's not something that I can do to optimize myself. I can't have spikes like that. You also can't have dips that are crazy dips, right? And so as I was learning and wearing this continuous glucose monitor and learning the foods that would spike me, but also then learning the foods that I was also having deep dips, I needed to start to understand what that meant for my body, what I needed to do to mitigate that, so I have a much less of these metabolic fluctuations, because that's inflammatory, right? And so my key goal in all of this is to manage my cognitive health due to my ApoE status. So we already talked about this last week or the week before. So if you want to know more about ApoE status, you can we talk about it regularly, but you can always go to the website. You can go to several of the shows where we talk about ApoE status. Point is, though, is that has a big implication in my cognitive health, and so my goal is to mitigate the negative impacts of diet, lifestyle, and that kind of thing, so I can control cognitive function as I age. That's the great thing too about all of this. If we know what our potential issues are, right? This is not a terrible marker, but it's a good marker to know, because if I don't understand it, then I don't know how to work with it. And that's what all of this is. We want to work with our bodies and our genetic makeup and our epigenetic makeup to optimize, but to mitigate the problems that can arise later on. So if I didn't know about this and know that I needed to control inflammation and know I needed to control my blood glucose levels, even though I'm super healthy, not having these spikes, this stuff is really important. And I'm obviously not healthy enough if I'm having these spikes, which can impact my cognitive health, right? So we want to, it's great that we have this ability and this access to dig in with this technology, whether it's testing, whether it's the apps and that kind of thing, because the more data we have, the better we can control all of these things. So good. Okay, so obviously inflammation is a key, it plays a key role in damaging DNA as well, and so ongoing inflammation. So if you think about something that I talk about a lot when it comes to gut health, is we have oftentimes we have this low-lying fire. I always see it as a fire in my brain. So this sort of grass fire it's not bad, it's not out of control, but it's just there and it's everywhere. And this is what I see as this low-grade inflammation that will cause DNA damage as well. So we want to keep that under control. Testing is going to be the easiest, best way to understand your inflammatory markers. And so aging is largely the accumulation of unrepaired cellular energy, right? Unrepaired cellular injury. And so with age, we have the repairing of enzymes slow down. So enzymes are catalysts. Enzymes are what push metabolic pathways to move on down the pathway so our bodies function properly. And so without enzymes, a lot of times we think about enzymes as, okay, well, my pancreas creates these digestive enzymes. Yes, well, and your mouth creates amylase. I'm pretty sure it's amylase to start the digestive process in your mouth, right? And so we have these enzymes that break down food, but we also have these enzymes that catalyze metabolic pathways. And so, not to get too deep into this, but to have maybe a little bit deeper understanding of the enzymes themselves, when we look at epigenetic variants, most of them are variants that are impacting enzymes. So if we look at, say we look at MTHFR. So MTHFR is methyl tetrahydrofolic reductase, right? And so that reductase means it's an enzyme. And so that enzyme is pushing the methylation pathway, whether it's B12, whether it's folate, right? Whether it's they're like trimethylglycine, right? So there are these methylators, right, that the MTHFR enzyme pushes down the pathway. So if we have these variants that are these different MTHFR variants, because there are several or multiple, and some of us have 1 copy, 2 copy. Anyway, we don't need to get too deep into that. But if we have certain variants of the MTHFR enzyme, then these pathways don't function as well because of the B12 or the folate or the trimethylglycine or the magnesium or whatever the case may be that helps to push those pathways. So that's when we understand the role and the mechanism of the enzyme, and then the role and the mechanism of the nutrients that help to push these pathways, then we know what it is we need to do in our supplementation and or our food and or lifestyle modifications. So I hope that makes sense. It's a pretty deep, well, it's a super deep process, right? So it's not one that's super simple to explain. And I'm not an expert at explaining this stuff, but I love it. So I think it's important to kind of have a little bit of an understanding of what it means when we're talking about these enzymes and these pathways and the nutrients and how they all work together and how we can optimize them. And that's really the goal, right? And so repair enzymes slow down. We have antioxidant production declines, and so antioxidant in our bodies do produce antioxidants, but we also get antioxidants through our food. Chronic inflammation then of course increases, and methylation efficiency drops. So we just talked about methylation. You know, so many things can happen when methylation is low. And understanding that, you know, I've talked about this a lot. You know, I have the least impactful MTHFR variant, right? It's not a big deal for me. But what I know is when my methylation is low, I start losing hair, right? I start losing hair right here on these areas. So if I don't take my methylated nutrients, and there's one particular one, it's by Apex Energetics, that is the one that works for me. It works the best for me because I've tried multiple. And so sometimes we got to play with things to really get what we need. But that's what really helps to my methylation to work properly, which is going to impact my hormones, which is going to impact, you know, so many gene expression, right? So methylation is a big deal. I think I'm going to do a show probably coming up specifically on methylation, because there's a lot of questions about methylation. MTHFR is only a part of methylation. Okay. So basically, you know, all of this accumulated stuff is what pushes age and the inability to repair properly. And so when we look at different enzymes that require different enzymes that repair DNA, they require specific nutrients and cofactors. And we're going to talk about just a few of them here. But there are certainly more. But we have zinc. We talk a lot about zinc, but we got to be really careful because so often we're hearing we got to take zinc, we got to build our immune system, we got the flu going around, we got COVID going around, whatever it is, and we got to take zinc. Sure, it's great, and yes, we do need it. It's super important. But we've got to be really careful taking zinc without copper. especially for any extended period of time, because there's a relationship there. If zinc goes too high, then copper goes too low, and vice versa. So you have a balance of zinc and copper, the zinc copper ratio. So the zinc by itself, though, or zinc, what it does is it's the structural stability of repair proteins. So yeah, super important for everything, for the immune system and for all of this stuff. But just keep in mind, don't just go out and take a whole bunch of zinc. Taking excessive nutrients is also problematic. Taking nutrients, supplements, nutrients, just to take them because you heard it's the thing to do is also problematic, right? So you got to know what your body needs in order for it to be optimal and how much to take. Dosing is important too. So magnesium. Magnesium is required for DNA polymerase activity. But magnesium is important for hundreds of metabolic activities in the body. So, and many of us are deficient in magnesium. I take multiple forms of magnesium on a regular basis, and I'll also kind of switch them out, and I'll take them here and, kind of all over the place, or not all over the place, but different forms at different times, so I'm mixing it up. But magnesium is important for DNA. Folate and B12, so we just talked about that those are big parts of the methylation process, but so is magnesium and a few other nutrients. But they're important for nucleotide synthesis as well as methylation, what I just said. So selenium. Selenium's cool because you eat a couple of Brazil nuts, you're eating food, you're going to get what usually is enough selenium in a day. So Brazil nuts are pretty cool little nuts. But selenium supports glutathione peroxidase, which is antioxidant protection. So glutathione is our master antioxidant. We have to have glutathione in order to recycle itself, in order to recycle other antioxidants, and we have to have other antioxidants to help to recycle glutathione. But it is the master key antioxidant, and so we can have SNPs that inhibit glutathione as well. So another reason to know your genetic variants, to know if your methylation is optimal. I'm sorry, if your glutathione, methylation too, but if your glutathione is optimal or not, or if you need to support your glutathione pathways and glutathione synthesis. Let's see, vitamin C, kind of what I just said, it regenerates antioxidants. So vitamin C, super important. Vitamin C is kind of cool. So it is the nutrient that has the shortest half-life of any nutrient. And so it doesn't stick around long. So ideally, if we're taking vitamin C, if you take vitamin C, you might want to take it throughout the day. So if you take 1,000 milligrams in the morning, 1,000 milligrams in the afternoon, 1,000 milligrams in the evening, that's probably pretty good because you're constantly getting it in your body. Vitamin C is super important for collagen production. But too much can also be problematic for the liver. So again, you want to know what you're taking, why you're taking it, how much you're taking it, and be strategic about it. We hear a lot about vitamin C, high dose IV vitamin C for managing cancer. So yes, but this is where you have a practitioner on board who is knowledgeable about how much to take, how to administer it, how much to administer. Because you want to watch the other parts of the body that could have a problem with that amount of vitamin C, right? Choline supports methylation and membrane integrity. So cellular membrane integrity is really, really important. It's the cells. So if we're thinking about micronutrients are brought into the body, they run around in the bloodstream, and then they're supposed to get into the cell, right? So we have extracellular nutrients running around in the serum, and then we have intracellular nutrients where they go in and they do their job. If there's dysfunctional cell membrane, then the nutrients aren't going to get into the cell. And so you may have, consider this, we can test say we can test magnesium, potassium, there are a couple other ones that we can test, but we're only testing serum levels, vitamin D, we're only testing serum levels of these nutrients. So we may have just eaten and they're running around in the bloodstream. But if we're not testing intracellular levels, then we don't know how much we're actually utilizing, and if our body is utilizing them. And so important, if you are considering getting some micronutrient testing done, you can do it, and you can do the extracellular or the serum levels, but ideally you do the testing that's going to be intracellular, so you actually have good data to go off of. Okay. And so of course, without adequate levels of these things, we have these strand breaks, and we have repair slows, and we have the telomeres shorten quicker. So important, and I think I really just kind of hit on this already, is that more is not better. Again, you want to be strategic about the nutrients that you're taking, that you're supplementing. And high-dose isolated nutrients without context can create imbalance. So we talked about that as well. We talked about that with zinc, copper, certainly, but with other nutrients that can be problematic in multiple areas of the body if we're not utilizing them properly, and if we're just taking B12. So B12 is a good one to well, I guess it's really all of the B vitamins to understand, because we don't want to take the B vitamins alone. We want to take all the B vitamins together. They work together. They are buddies. They need to be together. They're a team. And so it doesn't mean that you don't take a B complex, then you can add your singular nutrients on top of that. A lot of people will do a B complex, and then add your B12 on top of that. That's great, but you've got to have your B complex. You've got to have all of them working together. And that's how all nutrients are. They need their buddies, they need their teammates and their cofactors to work properly and to know what to do and where to go. Calcium is one of those as well, right? Calcium, if it doesn't have its buddies, it's just going to go randomly sit in places like breast tissue and brain tissue and heart tissue. This is not a good thing, right? So we have to keep in mind that nutrients need their team members. Okay. So these are things that we talk about a lot, but we'll hit on them briefly. So things that increase DNA damage. So we have environmental toxic load, right? So the stuff that's in our water, the stuff that's in our air. So dioxins are stored in fat for years. So scary. And so, yeah, we can chelate, we can do IV chelation therapy, we can do other types of supplemental detoxifications to pull. That's what binders are for, to pull it out of the tissues. But we have to be able to pull it out of the body. And if it's still in a fat-soluble form, then it can't be pulled out of the body. It's got to be in a water-soluble form. And so that's the liver's job. So it puts a lot of stress and strain on the liver. And so the liver, literally through phase 1, phase 2 detoxification, is converting fat soluble to water soluble so it can be eliminated. So that's where certainly want to optimize liver function. Heavy metals increase reactive oxygen species, which is going to this is, part of the reason, we need antioxidants in our diet, right? Pesticides disrupt mitochondria, but as we've also talked about, it also will disrupt the endocrine system. So our hormones, both men, women, kiddos, they're pretty nasty. So pesticides but all of these things too. We've got heavy metals that are metalloestrogens. We've got xenoestrogens. We've got mycoestrogens, which are from mold. So lots of things in our environment, unfortunately, can disrupt our endocrine system. And so then, of course, air pollution is going to create systemic inflammation. What all is in the air pollution? I don't know. I mean, there's so much stuff we could go in a whole rabbit hole right there in and of itself, but we'll leave it there because that's not what we're talking about. But we can't avoid it, really. I was listening to a podcast, it was a book a little while ago, and we talk about breathing and getting enough oxygen while we're breathing, because oxygen is healing. And one of the comments was, even if we did deep breathe all day long and remember to deep breathe all day long, the oxygen in our environment isn't great because of all the toxins in it, right? So we're constantly sort of fighting to balance, bring in more oxygen, but not bring in the toxins. We're going to, but then we've got to let the body be able to do its job to help to eliminate those toxins. So there's a lot going on there. Body's pretty amazing. It's really cool stuff. So then we've got metabolic stress. We've got high blood sugar, which those create advanced glycation end products, or age, which I think is really cool. It's age, right? Or ages. This is also what we talk about when it comes to things like type 3 diabetes, which is Alzheimer's. Now, there are multiple factors in Alzheimer's, right? There is a genetic component, the ApoE status. There's, the toxins, and there's the blood sugar, right? There's all kinds of stuff going on here. But when our blood sugar is constantly elevated, everything inside literally is sticky, right? And so the brain is sticky and the organs are sticky. This is not a good place to be. We're supposed to have a little bit of blood glucose, and then it's supposed to go down. It's supposed to, again, stay in that well-managed space right there. And I think so if I were to, there are different people who will say 120 should be your top after you eat. I think I've heard 110. Some will say 140. I think 140 is probably really pushing it. And then your lower levels, right around 70, that kind of thing. And so if you're going above 110, 120 and below 70, then you've got some pretty intense swings right there. So insulin resistance will create oxidative stress. And then we have visceral fat, which is going to produce inflammatory cytokines. So the cytokine word sort of came to, at least the way that I saw it. Cytokines, inflammatory cytokines have been part of sort of my world for a lot of years now and doing what I'm doing, but it became more mainstream in understanding that they have the potential of being problematic with COVID, right? Because it was pushing these inflammatory cytokines. It was damaging our lungs. And so visceral fat also can push these inflammatory cytokines. And so visceral fat is the fat that lives, sort of inside the GI. It wraps around our organs and our tissues. And when there's too much of it, which for a lot of people, there's a lot going on there, that becomes inflammatory. And that tissue is super biologically active, right? It's got a lot going on. It produces estrogen. So if you think about a man who has excess adipose tissue, visceral adipose tissue, who's going to be producing estrogens, this is not a good place to be, right? They can create this andropause situation, and we've talked about this before, so I'm not going to go any deeper than that. But it is inflammatory, and all of this stuff just pushes more stress. More stress pushes inflammation. Inflammation pushes more stress. Kind of a nasty cycle, right? So then we've also got chronic psychological stress, elevated cortisol. So again, cortisol will elevate due to internal stress, mental and emotional stress, which will also then push blood glucose levels, right? So all of those things then just creates more and more inflammation. So you can see how they just build off of each other in a super negative way. So you have activation of NF-kappa B, which is inflammatory signaling, and then you have increased mitochondrial strain. So mitochondria are little engines that are producing energy for us, and if we are straining our mitochondria, they become dysfunctional, and what happens? We don't have the energy that we had. We have fatigue that happens, right? And so on top of many other conditions that can happen as well. And so an ultra-processed diet, I feel like this is a given, but we still have so many people who are, just doing the quick, well, it's only every now and then I'm running through McDonald's, or it's only every now and then that I eat that candy bar. And I don't expect perfection, but, that every now and then is super relative, right? So if every now and then is once a week, that's a lot. So we've got to kind of keep this in perspective and in context, because so many people are still depending on these and it's not building us up. It's only tearing us down. And so the ultra processed diet, of course, is low in phytonutrients. You think the phytonutrients they feed our microbiome. Our microbiome is 70% of our immune function, our immune system. So we have to have a robust microbiome in order to have a robust immune system. And these phytonutrients are really important to feed our good, healthy keystone species and the other important species as well. So ultra-processed diet also has oxidized fat. So it's got oxidized fat, it's got unhealthy fats. Think of your canola oils. Yes, if you don't know this, canola oil is super unhealthy. Marketing does a great job at pushing it as being heart healthy. It absolutely is not. It's one of those things that if you have it in your kitchen, throw it away. If you are open to asking about it when you're eating out, do so, because it's everywhere. The canola oils and the seed oils are everywhere. They are damaging and they're deadly. They're oxidized. They will create massive inflammation. If you are a heart patient or any type of chronically ill person, this is not stuff that you want to have any part of your diet. If you're not sick, you don't want to have a part of your diet because it will make you sick. So just stay away from it. And so then, of course, the ultra-processed diet, it's got micronutrient dilution, so it's not feeding you. You always want to consider the foods that are truly feeding you and going to, so the body can do its job of keeping you alive, right? It's only going to do what it can do with what it has access to. And then, of course, low fiber impairs detox and gut health. Our microbiome feeds on phytonutrients. It also feeds on fiber. Fiber produces short-chain fatty acids, which supports our at least certain fibers produce short-chain fatty acids, which feed our microbiome. So all of these things work together, but really so much of it comes down to our microbiome and supporting that so everything else is going to function properly. So I want to hit a little bit on this because I think that it's important to put something that's this important and this touchy into context. And so cancer is not my specialty by far. But when we're looking at mitochondrial function, when we're looking at cellular health, when we're looking at DNA damage and epigenetics, all of these things are things that I love and talk about all the time. And a part of that is going to be if cancer does happen, it's because of all of these things, right? It's because there's something wonky that happened in the body because the body couldn't control it. So there's the BRCA gene that is, in my mind, it's like the ApoE4 gene, right? It's super scary. It has the potential of being super scary, but what we need to keep in mind is if we know we have it, we work with it, right? And so all of these genes play a role in our body. They're not just negative. They have positives to them. And so what's super interesting is, let's see, BRCA gene mutations increase vulnerability, but they do not guarantee disease. So keep that in mind. That should help you. I want you to understand that if you know you have it, you are able to do the research and learn how to mitigate dysfunction. And so BRCA genes help pause the cell cycle. They activate repair mechanisms, and they trigger apoptosis if repair fails. This is a good thing. This is what BRCA genes are intended to do. So this is not something to be afraid of, right? Environmental toxins like dioxins can epigenetically silence BRCA expression, which then will reduce repair efficiency. So if we sort of say that in kind of plain English, right? We can do toxin testing. We can look to see what toxins, like if dioxins are one of them, if it's a heavy burden on us, will it push this BRCA gene? Yeah. So that we want to understand our toxic load. We want to constantly support our liver function so we can get rid of these toxins. We want to constantly take binders so we can pull these things out of our body. So the things that are protective for, excuse me, so we don't silence the BRCA gene, polyphenols like resveratrol, phytonutrient-rich diets. We've talked about this multiple times now, right? This also still feeds the microbiome and reducing toxin exposure. So I think that having an understanding of your situation and then having context around it is the most important thing that we can do. And the best thing about it, it gives us so much power. If I, which I don't, but if I had the BRCA gene, I do have the ApoE4 gene, then I know, okay, these are the things that I need to do to manage the expression. And so that's what I do for myself with the ApoE4 gene on a daily basis. I don't want Alzheimer's. I don't want to put that on my family, right? Nobody wants cancer. Nobody wants to put that on their family. So we know our potential. Let's do what we can do to mitigate it. All right. So we have this really cool SIRT1 gene, and it's like longevity signaling, right? So it's pretty cool because it regulates tumor suppressor proteins. It inhibits inflammatory pathways like NF-kappa B. It improves insulin sensitivity and supports mitochondrial health. It declines with overnutrition, with sedentary lifestyle, and with chronic hyperinsulinemia, so elevated insulin levels. It's then activated by 12 to 14 hour overnight fasting, right? So this is, goes back to the overnutrition. Don't eat too much. Get your fasting in, your moderate fasting, which is normal fasting, right? So if you do your, if you eat at 8 o'clock in the morning and you finish eating at 8 o'clock at night, then you've got your 12-hour fasting period. So think about that. So it's super simple. Anybody can do it. And then, we talked about this last week. Last week was all about fasting. But what was I going to say? That overnight fasting is intended to help repair systems. Oh, what I was going to say was don't eat 3 hours before you go to bed. So if you eat your dinner finished by 8, then it's assuming that you're going to bed at 11. So take that in mind, or keep that in mind when you are sort of working through how you want to help your repair systems. So if you are a 10 o'clock bedtimer, right? So you want to have your meal finished by 7 o'clock, right? And so then you have breakfast at 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock, depending on how long you want your fast to be. So you can you can listen to or watch the show from last week. We got super deep into fasting. It was really fun. If you don't know this, my husband and I just finished a 4-day fast. And so it really made me want to kind of dig into fasting and all the benefits and what you would use it for and how long you fast. And we talked about all different kinds of fasting. So it was really, for me, it was super fun. It's a great show. So then the SIRT1 is also activated by exercise. There's the polyphenols again, right? And metabolic flexibility. So what that means is you are able to efficiently burn carbohydrates and fat, and you do those at different times, right? So you have this metabolic flexibility to where there are certain times when you're burning fat, where you're supposed to be burning fat, and there's certain times when you're supposed to be burning carbs. You're not always supposed to be burning carbs. So if you are trying to lose weight, you don't want to just always be in carb burn mode, right? Or always in fat burn mode, right? So you have to have this flexibility. And so I do love this, is that longevity genes respond to mild stress, not to chronic stress, right? So we talked last week about this term phytohormesis. Hormesis, that's what it is. So hormesis being a stress on the body, phytohormesis being stress on the body from plants. These little stressors can be good, right? If we have a little stress in our daily life that keeps us motivated and going and functioning and doing what we need to do, then that's a good type of stress. But if we're overly stressed, if our cortisol is chronically elevated, if we're not able to come to this place where our body is able to relax, this is not a good thing, right? All right. So moving on, we already talked a little bit about telomeres. I'm going to go through this just to see if there's anything that I missed. Yeah, we'll dig into this a little bit. So telomeres in biological age. So they shorten every time a cell divides. Did not know that. That's fascinating. But they act as protective caps. So accelerated shortening comes from chronic inflammation, poor sleep, smoking, psychological stress, nutrient deficiency, right? So you see a pattern in everything that we're talking about here. Protection comes from folate sufficiency. Omega-3 intake, which is your fish oil. There are some algae that produce omega-3s as well. Don't count on getting your omega-3s from nuts and seeds. Most people, it's not, so the plant-based version, the ALA version, has to be converted to the EPA DHA version, which is the form that's utilized by the body. It's an inefficient conversion, so if you're a vegetarian or a vegan and that's what you're counting on, you're probably not getting enough omega-3 to truly make a difference for you, right? And some people, especially if you're struggling with cardiovascular disease, things like that, cognitive function, we need really high levels of omega-3s to help to squash that inflammation. And so you're not going to get that from nuts and seeds. So just keep that in mind. So other things that are protective of telomeres: exercise, stress regulation, adequate antioxidant status. Again, these are all things that this is all lifestyle stuff. This is stuff that we do day in and day out. It's the choices that we make day in and day out. Okay, so telomere length reflects cumulative stress exposure, not just chronological age. So that's how we can be older by way of our telomeres than maybe we actually are in years. And that's not a good thing, certainly. Okay, detox, balance, and DNA protection. Let's see. So we'll go through this. We still have a little bit of time. So I think going back to making sure that our detoxification is optimal is important for toxins, for eliminating hormones that maybe are in excess or need to be, eliminated, right? They've got to be used up and eliminated. And so we look at phase 1, which activates toxins and can create reactive intermediates, right? So phase 2 then is what conjugates and eliminates, right? So that conjugation is turning or converting the fat-soluble toxins, hormones, into a water-soluble form. And so requires a very specific nutrients. So phase 1 and phase 2 require pretty different nutrients in order to function properly. And so we've got glutathione, sulfur amino acids, glycine, taurine, choline, adequate methylation. All of these things are super important for phase 2. If we have an imbalance, a strong phase 1 and a weak phase 2, this increases oxidative stress and there's a greater DNA damage risk. So we don't want to have an upregulated phase 1 and a downregulated phase 2. You want to have them both working properly. So there are certain detoxes out there that will push one or the other, and we don't want to do that. We want to be as balanced as possible, and we want to allow the body to work the way that it's supposed to work in balance. Now, with that being said, we can also have certain variants, epigenetic variants, that may create a stronger or a weaker phase 1 or phase 2. So again, going back to this is why the testing is so cool, and understanding our specific variants, because we can support that where we needs to be supported. This is super targeted nutrition. This is super targeted medicine. This is the stuff that is for helping us to be our best, for optimizing and for disease control, right? So let's see practical examples of helping with detoxification, cruciferous vegetables, so your cauliflower, your broccoli, your Brussels, all of those so delicious and so yummy. Sulfur-rich foods, so think your onions and your garlic, and then protein adequacy. So many people are deficient in protein. Even if you eat protein, you're still deficient. So the thing to keep in mind for most people, this is very general, but I think it's a good generalization that you want to have 1 gram of protein per ideal body weight. So that ideal is important. So if you have some weight to lose, you don't want to count your protein for that extra weight. You want to know what your ideal body weight is, and that's where your protein should be. Now, if you're working out hard, regularly, then you want to have closer to 1.2 grams. It's a lot of protein, right? So personally, I use amino acids. My favorite is Perfect Aminos. I use those on a regular basis to help me get the protein that I need. And as women, as we age and start going through the changes that we go through, extra protein is a good thing. So knowing this about your genes is, well, and of course your health status and where you are in life is important. So you got to get enough protein. Protein, the amino acids, the protein that breaks down into amino acids, they build neurotransmitters, right? They build enzymes. We're talking about this enzyme activity that is so important to every metabolic pathway that they catalyze, right? So we have to have these amino acids for everything that we are and everything that we do, including building muscle, which is going to increase our burn rate, right? Our metabolism. So this is super important to make sure that we're getting enough protein. We're finally at a point to where we're putting more emphasis on this, but we need to keep that in mind. It's got to be a part of our everyday. And I know people have a big problem with not everybody, but a lot of people have a big problem with meat. This is how we're created. So the way that God made us is to eat meat and to utilize protein, right? There's no way of getting around that. It's just what it is. Now, if you don't want to eat meat, you're going to have to supplement it. If you want to optimize. Now, people can say all day long that, you know, they can be vegan and, you know, do really well, and I think that's fine, but I think it's also, in time, it'll be problematic. You got to have the protein, and you got to supplement, right? We really weren't meant to supplement. Now we have to these days because we're so lacking in food and things are you know, have gotten so wonky. And when we get to a place where we don't have the nutrient density that we need, we've got to supplement so we can bring it back to balance, and then hopefully we can stop supplementing, right? That's the ideal goal, is to not have to supplement at all. But I think that to assume that a vegan lifestyle is optimal, I think is problematic. I do. Some of you are going to hate me for that, and that's okay. But I work with vegans all the time. And so I will do what needs to be done in order for people to be healthy, and we'll supplement where we need to supplement. But I think if we look at it in real life, in real world, you know, we're supposed to eat protein. So don't mean to beat a dead horse on that, but we also got to make sure that we keep in mind that when we are eating protein, that it's good, healthy protein. It's not conventionally raised animals, right? This is not good either. They are inflamed and they're unhealthy. They're lacking in nutrients. They're lacking in omega-3s. And so this is a whole other talk that I don't have the time to get into today. But if you're eating meat, you've got to eat good, healthy meat, and that's not your CAFO, conventionally raised animals. They're just not healthy. So we all do the best that we can with the budgets that we have, and so I understand that. But if you have the ability to buy a cow, to buy your chickens, because it's a big upfront cost, but it's much less expensive over time. If that's a thing for you, then that's a great way of doing it. That's what we have done now for the past couple of years. And it's a significant reduction in cost. You just got to have the upfront, which is not always easy to do. But it's a big savings for sure. Okay, So I think that we're at a pretty good point. We got through a lot more than I thought we would, so that makes me super happy. And I think that most of this is kind of going to be repetitive. So let's end there. And I guess the key is if you have questions about anything, I'm always here to be a resource for you to chat about this stuff. My favorite thing is this precision wellness, right? Which is why I'm calling it the program Precision Wellness, because this is what we want. This is what I want for myself. This is what I've been working on for myself, and anybody who I work with, this is what I want for them. I don't want the one size fits all. And it's a great thing because a lot of people are practicing this way now. I think that the way I'm doing it is kind of cool, and it's a lot of fun. But this is the trend that we're on, and it's a really, really good thing to be on a trend to know that people like me and other practitioners want you to be as optimal as you can be for you. That's really what matters. It also makes it really difficult, right? It's not. I wish we could do the blanket statement for everyone, but we can't. But it also makes it really fun. It's detective work for sure. It's putting pieces of the puzzle together. There's a lot to it, but it's an amazing way to help people be their best. And looking at your genetics is huge. It really, really is. It's not diagnostic, but it's such an amazing tool. It's really good stuff. So with that being said, you can dig into or learn a little more about the precision blueprint that I have been doing for people. I have just sort of this right now, an introductory at $97 that is still super targeted. It does not include genetics, but if you decide you want to move forward with it, we can include genetics labs. We can include the CGM, all kinds of stuff that we can do to make this super focused and targeted. But you can go to my link tree. Got all kinds of information and freebies and resources and that kind of thing in my link tree, including how to get more information on the precision blueprint. But there's also the QR code for your precision blueprint if you just want to go straight to that. So happy to work with you on that. You can also go to the website. You can fill out an assessment there so I'll reach out to you. We can chat about it, see what we might be able to do to get you on your way to whatever your goals are. So that might be to optimize. You might have some stuff you're struggling with. That's what we do. So thank you for being here. Thanks for joining me. Super fun talk. And we'll be back here next week, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, streaming live on KUHSdenver.com. And we'll see you here in a week. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.